Today on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. The 19-foot Cuda Craft project received some very custom touches in the rigging bay at MCU.
Before we can deliver it to Ron, we've got to get this thing in the rigging bay and get it all assembled and put together.
FS Boating Editor George LaBonte joins Dreamboat owner Colin Vancampen aboard his completely restored 25-foot Mako Walkaround.
Colin ultimately was able to realize his dream from his youth of owning a Mako. Happened 3 times with the 17 and now a 4th time with this 250.
And a classic Boston Whaler is outfitted with a set of self-leveling trim tabs.
It helps you get up on plane a lot quicker, and he had a little porpoising problem, so that was the main reason we went with some tabs on this boat.
All coming up on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat.
All right guys, so we've got this Cuda Craft moving along really well. This boat initially came into the shop for a simple fuel tank installation, and it morphed into a huge project. As soon as they cut the deck out of this boat, we found out that they used pour foam throughout the entire hull of the boat. They never had any limber holes around the stringer areas, so they could let the water leave the contained areas. So this boat was actually getting water into certain spots and holding it. It was never able to get out unless it evaporated. That's probably what caused a premature tank erosion, which caused the boat to come into the shop in the first place. But once Roberto got all that foam cut out, cleaned all up, we found the stringers weren't even attached to the bottom of the hull. I mean, this thing really turned into one thing after another. But the guys were able to put it all back together. Now that it's all glass, solid, put in one piece, it went into the paint shop. Mike did an incredible job. He laid down all the paint. Everything's blended together really nice. Before we could deliver it to Ron, we've got to get this thing in the rigging bay and get it all assembled and put together. Sometimes when we take boats apart, we just put the old parts back in and it's a 1, 2, 3 operation. But this customer's actually added some extras, and he wanted some rod holders installed in some different places on the boat. So I had to make it clear to Austin, when you go to mount that rod holder, depending on the angle of the rod holder you have, that rod holder could end up hitting the hull. So I had to explain to him about the degrees and the angles of the rod holders and make sure that he positions them properly. He might measure in the top and the center of the gunnel, but if he ends up putting that rod holder in the wrong spot, he could end up hitting the hull. And that would be a major mistake, because then I'd have to call Mike in to fix a fiberglass and gel coat repair, and that's just going to take time away from the project, and it's going to hurt my delivery time. So I had to go over with Steve a couple specific things that Ron wanted on this rigging job for the Cuda Craft. Now that Steve has an idea, he can get on with it and get this thing wrapped up.
The Cuda Craft just rolled into my rigging bay. We got to get this boat knocked out. This is for a guy down in the Keys. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on getting his live wells plumbed up. He's got 2 separate live wells. Actually 2 live wells, pretty cool idea, for 2 different colors. One's a blue and one's a brown. I didn't know that made a big difference in having different colors, but then again, I'm not a professional fishing guide. I'm a professional boat builder. But anyway, so I'm going to do what he wants to do. He wanted separate pickups on each one of these live wells. You want to get the correct hole size for the threaded pipe that's going through the boat, because you want a good tight fit. You don't want water coming into your boat other than going into your live well. So I'm going to get the correct size, high-speed pickup. These are designed to flow water to your live well while you're up and running without a pump. Got these all sealed up, installed. I'm going to move on installing the ball valves. Of course, you want to put some pipe dope on it when you screw them down. Well, the reason you want to use a ball valve on top of your pickup is in case your pump breaks, cracks, hose come off, because when you're up and running, it's forcing water into the live well. And if you lose the pump and you're not aware of it, you can sink your boat. So that you can go back there and shut the water off, and you ain't going to have no water coming through that high-speed pickup anymore. Once I got them installed, now I'm going to move on to plumbing the hosing to a spray head in each live well. And I'm also going to install an overflow for the live well. The live well will fill up to a certain point and it will constantly flow out. Well, usually on your overflows, you want to go a little bit bigger size. Normally, when I use a spray head that has a 3/4 inch hose, I will go with 1.5 inch overflow. So I usually put the overflow a little below the spray head. As it's hitting the water, it's going to create an aerator effect. So you never want your overflow to go over your spray head. You want to keep it below it. So I got all that done. Now I am going to put he wanted the aerators in each one of these live wells too, so I'm going to install them. Real easy to install. You just got a little pump that you mount down in the boat, and you put small little hose, 1/4 inch hose that you run into the live well on a little strip down to a stone that's going to disperse the air evenly at the bottom of the live well. Well, it's great to have an aerator system because, you know, the more oxygen you have in the water for your bait fish and shrimp and stuff, the more lively they're going to be. And, you know, just like I said, he's a guy down in the Keys, and, you know, good active live bait is better than a sluggish live bait, and it's good to have an aerator.
So Steve's doing a really good job on the wiring in the back transom area of this boat. I've got to get him up to the console. There's a couple of new features I'm going to do Ron has no idea about. He's really going to love them. As soon as Steve wraps up the back, he can get up into the forward part of the boat, and we'll get this thing rolling.
When we return, FS Boating Editor George LaBonte joins Dreamboat owner Colin Vancampen aboard his 25-foot Mako in this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment. This segment brought to you by Fiberglass Coatings, the largest selection of fiberglass materials in the United States.
FGCI is a leading supplier of composite materials, family-owned for over 60 years and headquartered right here in Florida. We have the materials and technical expertise to service manufacturers, repair professionals, and DIYers alike. Our gel coat color matching is a favorite of seasoned professionals and weekend warriors. Access our online store at fgci.com, call to speak with a product specialist, or visit our stores in Fort Lauderdale or St. Petersburg. FGCI is your partner on boat projects big and small.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us for this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment with Florida Sportsman Boating Editor George LaBonte as we feature anglers who have already launched their dream. Florida Sportsman began these features 30 years ago, and the dreams just keep getting better.
Today we're going to meet up with Colin Vancampen and take a look at his recently renovated vintage 250 Mako. Since I've been working with Project Dreamboat, one thing's becoming clear to me. There's a lot of people that want to do a job on a boat so they can have the boat at the end of the road. Then there's a lot of people who also are really into the process. Colin definitely falls into the latter category. For him, it's as much about doing the work as it is about the end product.
Well, basically, I started at a young age commercial fishing out of my boats, and when they'd break, we didn't have the money to fix them, to pay somebody to do it, so we had to get out and do it ourselves. And then as things went along, I was buying boats just the hull only, and then I would start plumbing it and wiring it, mounting the engines and setting the throttles, gear shifters and everything. And I really started to like it. Then I figured out that I could buy an older boat and fix that up for half the price and have a really nice boat the way I want it. I found now that I actually like working on the boats more than using them. I like the Mako line because as a kid growing up, I'd always look at these boats that we could never afford them, but I would go and look at them and just dream about how awesome that would be to have my own boat, and this would be it.
Colin ultimately was able to realize his dream from his youth of owning a Mako happen 3 times with the 17 and now a 4th time with this 250.
The weird part was, for this boat, everything worked. The macerator pumps worked, the freshwater pump worked, all the switches, everything worked. And I was like 30 years later almost, and everything still works on this boat. I was really thinking about just putting some motors on it and being done. And then came the whole, well, maybe I'll just start doing a few things.
Now, despite the fact that everything seemed to work on this boat, Colin had to do a little bit of digging, and we know already that he likes to do a job. Once he started to pick away at some things on the boat, one thing led to another and another and another, and soon he was in the middle of a project.
And then I saw my buddy over at Marine Customs, and he said, well, you know, this transom's really this is questionable. You don't want to fix this all up and put the bracket on it and have a bad transom. So then we get into the transom and we do the transom, and then it just kind of grew. The reason why I wanted to do the bracket on the back is twofold. I like the increased running space along the back, along the bottom of the hull, and then I have the motors away from the boat, which makes it a little quieter. You know, it makes it quieter. It gives me that extra space to put an extra box in, and we have a nice way to get out of the water for when we're diving and whatnot. And also that bracket's sitting over the larger trim tabs that we put in. We filled in the trim tab pockets that came with Mako. They were only 9 by 12. It's really not big enough to bring the bow down in a head seat. So we went with a 12 by 12 trim tab, Bennett trim tab that's tucked up underneath that Armstrong bracket. And it works really well. The boat didn't come with engines, which was attractive to me, because then I'm not paying for engines that I don't want anyway. I really like the look of the new Yamaha 200 4 cylinders. The weight was good. They weighed about the same as any old 2-stroke you're going to put on there. The helm layout was really helpful with Brian. I kind of just bought the electronics I thought that I would like to have, and then he put the puzzles together. It's a super clean layout. The switch panel is awesome. It's all lit up, and it's all Bocatech switches. Super easy to wire, which is good because I wired it. The old Mako bait well, being at deck level, never really flowed over right. Now there's a lot better ways of doing things than they're tried and true. And so it's got awesome water flow. It really keeps the baits frisky. It fits perfectly with my situation. Fits nicely up underneath the top, and it works like a champ.
One of the benefits of customizing a boat for your personal needs goes beyond the looks of the boat. Colin is 6 feet 7 inches tall. He was going to need a top that he could fit under without banging his head into all the time.
I pretty much can't buy a boat off of anybody that's got a top that's going to clear me. I'm always hitting my head on the rod holders. This thing's 7 feet off the deck, so that way I can hike up in there and not worry about it, or hitting my head when we're running or whatever. And so that's the kind of accommodations that I do for me.
Before this project, Colin owned a larger center console, a Mirage, that he also restored on his own. But at this point in his life, his kids have left home. He really needed a boat that he was going to be able to use on his own. This was going to suit him perfectly.
Something like this size, it's easy to handle. Having the Walkaround, plenty of room to move around in the back to do what I'm doing. I'm usually fishing by myself or with another person. The way things are coming along, I'm not done with it yet. The story will continue with what I do with this thing, because that's part of the fun for me. I come away from it with a back that's all twisted up, and I'm all cut up and beat up, but I sleep good at night after that. And then I'm thinking about the next thing I'm going to do for it. And I find that once I get it all done, then I get bored with it, and then I want to do another one.
When it came time to say goodbye to Colin, we left him alone to clean the boat on his own and didn't offer to help. We did, however, leave him a gift from our friends at Surehold. Even though Colin was trying to tell himself that this was probably going to be his last build, I'm not so sure I believe that.
After spending $4,500 on the hull and $60,000 on repairs and custom modifications, the cost of Colin's Dreamboat comes to a total of approximately $64,500. When we return, in the rigging bay at MCU, a classic Boston whaler is outfitted with a set of self-leveling trim tabs. This segment brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
Yamaha's 4.2-liter V6 offshore 4-strokes. For those that like their V6 lighter, faster, and stronger. Setting new standards for power, efficiency, speed, and lightweight. Built for the rigors of offshore boating. Packed with Yamaha's legendary reliability. And now Yamaha's 4.2-liter V6 4-strokes offer a choice between digital or mechanical controls to match your rigging preference. Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us as Steve the Legend Altenhoff installs self-leveling trim tabs on a classic Boston whaler.
So I had one of my good customers call me up and tell me it was time for his annual service on a 17 whaler. I sent the guys down to get the boat, and one of the guys made a comment to me that the bow rises a lot when he goes to take off. This would be the perfect boat to install some Bennett self-leveling tabs. These things don't require switches or electrical components. You pretty much just mount them on the back of the boat and they work independently of any other assistance. It's pretty neat, and I think he's gonna love it. I'm not even gonna tell him I'm doing it. I'm just gonna wait till he goes to take off in his boat next time, and he's gonna tell me the thing's running way better. I know this guy, and this is gonna be a good one. I can't wait to see his reaction when he gets his boat back.
Brian just came up to me and he said, we've got this little Boston whaler out here that needs some trim tabs. The guy didn't want to spring for electric tabs or anything like that, so Bennett supplied us with a nice set of SLT tabs, which are pretty cool. These tabs are actually spring-loaded. You know, you could probably put them on any boat, but if you've got a boat with a tiller handle and you don't have no electrical system in this boat, you know, so you don't want to have to add a battery or something like that, that's what these tabs are good for. You have no hydraulic hoses, you have no wiring that you have to run. All you have to do is do some adjustment on them once you figure out what your boat is going to do when it's in a neutral position. Take it out, run it. If you get too much bow down, then you just adjust it and try it again. So it's pretty cool that you can adjust these. The tab itself, the backing plate is your template. So you're going to put that up on the back of the boat and you're just going to move it up 1/4 inch. You're going to mark your holes, you're going to drill them, and then you're going to bed it down with 5200. You're going to assemble the hinge on the tab. You're going to get that up there, the hinge part first on the transom of the boat. You're going to put a couple screws in it, and then now you're going to slide your tab in it. It's like a little groove hook tab type. So slide them in, run the screws down, get my straight edge, set it up to where I want the back of the tab at, mark it on the transom of the boat for the foot of the tab, mark the holes, drill them, bed at 5200, screw them in. Then I'm going to jump over to the other side and I'm going to do the same thing. Got the other side done. Now these are spring-loaded tabs, so they come with a little pin in them. So now that I've got it mounted, I can release the pin. You got to hold up on the tab, pull the pin out, and the tab is actually going to go down to its full down position. Do that on both sides. The way these tabs work, as you get going on the boat, it helps you get up on plane a lot quicker. And he had a little porpoising problem, so that was the main reason we went with some tabs on this boat. You got adjustment to it. If you got too much bow down, you can slide the actuator back on the tab or forward, depending on your adjustment. So I'm curious to see how these tabs work out. I may have to adjust them one way or other. Won't know until we get the boat out on the water and do a trial run.
So Steve really flew through that installation. Those tabs are on the back of the boat. Everything's working great. I can't wait till we move forward, find out what Jeff has to say about this. He's going to be excited, and he's going to love the way this boat handles now.
When we come back, the Cuda Craft project is reassembled and customized in the rigging bay at MCU. This segment brought to you by Infinity by Harman. It's all about the music. At Marine Customs Unlimited, our professionally trained staff is committed to making all your boating dreams come true while providing unmatched attention to detail and quality. Specializing in custom boat building and modifications, fiberglass and gel coat repairs, insurance claims, upholstery and canvas work, custom dash panels, Yamaha outboard sales and service, and more. Marine Customs Unlimited. You dream it, we build it. Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us as the rigging crew works to customize and complete the 19-foot Cuda Craft project.
So now that Steve's up at the console of this Cuda Craft, it's time to button things up. There's not a lot going on up here. I've added a couple of custom touch things that Ron wasn't expecting, and I'm sure he'll appreciate when he sees them. But for the most part, it's the wiring and the attention to the quality that we're putting in this boat. Ron's a professional charter captain, and he's gonna depend and rely on things like navigation lights and pumps to always be working. So we're using a quality Pacer tinned copper wire. This stuff's the best. It's the top of the line. Once he's done with that, we can move on, get this boat in the water, and sea trial.
All right, I got the live well situation all taken care of now. I need to jump up in the boat and get his console buttoned up. So the first thing I'm going to do on this console, I'm going to reinstall his control box, his key switch, and the gauges that he have. Usually like doing all my engine stuff first. That way it gives me a path for my wiring to run with. So get all that done. You got to double check your binnacle control box and make sure you got it hooked up correctly. You don't want the throttle on the shift side, and you don't want the shift side on the throttle side, which is real easy to determine. Just pop the counting off the engine, move the cable back and forth, figure out which one's which. reinstalled all this stuff, and now I'm ready to move on to his little bit of wiring that he has in there for his switches, 3 switches. He didn't want his switches exposed on the console, so he wanted them down inside, no big deal. Nav light, bilge pump, and accessory switch, you know, that's just simple as it can get. Well, with some of the existing wiring he had in there, it was non-tinted, it was copper wire, so I'm going to delete all that stuff. Just my best friend is a pair of wire cutters. Consoles hate me when they see me cutting with wire cutters. But so I'm going to get all the old stuff out, and I'm going to install some good quality Pacer marine wire, which is built and designed just for the marine industry. You know, it's tinted so that it won't leach corrosion down the wiring if you do get a little nick in it, which is really important when you come to the marine side of wiring. I like to make it look professionally done, nice and clean, routed correctly, and you know, I take pride in my work. That's why I take the extra time to do that. You know, this guy's going to look in there and he's going to go, "Oh wow," you know, compared to what it used to be. And we're going to get this boat down to the guy down in the Keys so he can get out there and start making money again.
So while Steve wrapped up that Pacer wire job in the console, I had to go grab Vic out of the upholstery shop. Ron's clients are going to want a nice, comfortable seat up in front of that console that we customized for him, and I need to get Vic to build me something really plush and comfy to match his existing helm chair. Now that these guys got this boat all put together, it's time for a sea trial. I'm delivering this boat all the way to Alamorada in the Keys, and I don't want any mishaps or problems. Outside of that, I love to run these boats anyway. When we're done doing work, especially structural work, I like taking the boat out, giving it a good pounding, making sure nothing's going to rear its ugly head. I don't want to see any mistakes or mishaps come up with the client finding them first. I love the sea trials at the end. They're great, especially after we finish the boat, and they run perfect. So just as I expected, running this Cuda Craft, after reattaching those stringers and putting everything together the right way, this boat rode incredibly. It was super stout and solid. It was a great ride. I couldn't imagine what this boat rode like before. This thing must have been all over the place. I took it through its trials, turning the wheels sharp from side to side, trimming the engine up and down, trying everything I could to make something happen wrong. Everything worked great. I noticed though, there was a leak in the bilge. Sometimes when you build these boats and you put all new hoses on the pumps, you don't get the hose clamps quite tight enough. So I'm gonna have to get this boat back to the shop, get Steve to tighten a couple of hose clamps. Other than that, I'm totally stoked about this boat, and I can't wait to get it down to the Keys and deliver it to Ron. I'm really impressed with the ride and the quality of the boat overall, and Ron's little ideas, they're actually pretty cool. It's neat having those switches in the back transom of the boat, and it's really clean on the dash, not having a whole bunch of stuff. I like the idea of a simple boat. This thing's gonna be great. Ron's gonna love it.
Next week on Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. The 31-foot Contender project is given its final touches and splashed for an offshore test run. A custom bracket is installed on a classic 25-foot Mako. And a 34-foot Venture gets an updated look and feel with brand new power on the transom. The filming of Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat has been shot on location at Marine Customs Unlimited. You dream it, we build it. If you've completed or working on your own dreamboat, we'd love to hear about it. Email George at george.labonte@outdoorsg.com, and we might just feature your project on the show.